When we talk about Greece, our mind either rushes to the modern country of Greece, with all of its fantastic tourist destinations, or we think of ancient Greece and all of the advanced politics and mythology that brought about the rivalries between Athens and Sparta, and all of its historical sites which link closely to the pantheon of Greek gods, which stirs our imagination and interest. After the fall from power of the mighty ancient Greek city-states, the culture of Greece endured. Such was its monumental influence. The language and the alphabet were convenient and inspirational for other societies who obtained so much information with so much ease because of it. So that when the city-states themselves became politically weak, the Hellenistic culture endured and inspired. The entire Greek-speaking world was overshadowed and engulfed by the Romans, but the Romans protected Greek values and heritage in order to maintain its loyalty, and this would ultimately cause a rift between East and West, which resulted in Roman culture falling apart in the West, where Latin culture dominated, but in the East, Roman culture survived within a Greek-speaking realm. So the period of Roman and Byzantine dominance of Greek lands lasted for over a millennium, but Greek culture was central to this millennium. If Greek culture was so strong in a Roman society, exactly what was going on in the heartlands of Greek culture in the Balkan Peninsula during this period. The History of the World podcast, written and presented by Chris Hasler.
Looking for a protein shake that tastes as good as it performs? Meet Rockin' Protein Max. Packed with 50 grams of fuel, it'll help you keep up when your day won't slow down. And because it's always creamy and never chalky, every sip tastes great. Even better, it's lactose-free and has 0 added sugar. It's not every day you find a protein shake you actually want to finish. Catch Rockin' Protein in the dairy cooler at a store near you. Rockin' Protein and Shamrock Farms are registered trademarks of Shamrock Foods Company.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, oh yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
Volume 4, The Medieval World. Episode 9A, Roman Greece. The initial relationship between the growing influence of Rome and the ancient Greek world was one of admiration. Ancient Greece was academically advanced, and Rome gained much from the culture of ancient Greece. The Romans had an alphabet based on the innovative alphabet of the Greeks. The Roman governance sought to learn from the successes of Athenian democracy. The pantheon of Roman gods was very similar to the traditional Greek gods. Rome viewed ancient Greece as a successful society and believed that it could learn from it. Of course, Greece was not a united polity at any point during the Classical Age. The Greek city-states, or poleis, shared cultural aspects which are defined as Greek, but they operated in complete independence from each other, or at least the major city-states such as Athens, Corinth, Sparta and Thebes did. The Roman Republic operated as a single polity in contrast. Ancient Greek culture can be suggested to have started with the Minoans on the island of Crete some 4,000 years ago, but the Minoans were very different from the mainland polis of ancient Greece from 1500 years later. The first mainland Greek culture were the Mycenaeans, and these are the earliest known culture to have spoken the earliest known form of the Greek language. The Mycenaeans took control of the Minoans, forming a Greek realm crossing different lands and islands in the Aegean Sea. After the Mycenaean culture disappeared as a dominant force, the Greek lands entered a comparative dark age, but elements of the Mycenaean culture must have survived in small pockets because it would be the continuation of Greek culture during this mysterious period around 3,000 years ago that would form the beginnings of the ancient Greek world. Greek cultures would emerge independently from one another across the Aegean Sea, from the Balkan Peninsula to the islands of the Aegean to the western Anatolian Peninsula. By 2,500 years ago, city-states such as Athens, Corinth, Olympia and Sparta started emerging and becoming more powerful, and they would also start exploring and colonising other coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea. Sparta would be an example of a dominant polis, becoming powerful enough to influence other Greek cultures around it on the Peloponnese Peninsula. It was a good thing that the Greek polis became powerful because even though they were independent from each other and fiercely competitive with each other, their shared Greek culture could often bind them together when a threat of a completely foreign polity such as the Achaemenid Persians looked to invade Greek lands. Arguably, their power played against the polis after they repelled the Persians, as both Athens and Sparta created alliances with their neighbours in order to counterbalance each other. The warfare between Athens and Sparta prevented Greek affluence as they wasted their resources battling each other. When the Macedonians to the north grew in power, they were able to conquer the Greek city-states to their south due to their weakened state, making the Macedonians the new dominant representatives of Greek culture. The most successful Macedonian ruler was Alexander the Great, and his vast expansion of the Macedonian Empire would take Greek culture as far east as the Indus Valley. After the collapse of the Macedonian Empire, remnants of Greek culture would continue to exist 3,000 miles east of the heartlands of ancient Greece. These remnants would exist in the language, art, architecture, religion and the coinage of the region. After the Asian lands of the Macedonian Empire fragmented, the Macedonians still held a degree of power on the Balkan Peninsula, and by this time the Roman Republic was becoming a substantial force, knocking on the western door of the Balkan Peninsula. By the middle of the 2nd century BCE, the Romans had conquered the Macedonians and exerted their dominance of the Balkan Peninsula, and this would represent a period of Roman cultures dominating Greek heartlands of the Balkan Peninsula for many centuries, and the period of focus for this episode. Macedon would become a Roman province, and the lands of the southern Balkan Peninsula would fall under Roman influence. The Romans razed Corinth to the ground in order to make the other Greek city-states subservient to the Romans. Corinth was an important trade centre, so the Romans would actually have to go to the trouble of rebuilding it. So now the ancient Greek city-states were effectively under Roman control, and Roman influence extended to Anatolia. Anatolia itself was a patchwork of kingdoms during this time. One of those kingdoms was Pontus, which bordered on the south of the Black Sea, and in the year 120 BCE, a new king would be crowned who would have a long reign, and he was King Mithridates VI. During his reign, Mithridates would look to expand Pontic influence, and this would challenge Roman interests in the region. The result would be the breakout of the Mithridatic Wars between Pontus and Rome. Mithridates' main Roman opponent in the initial exchanges was the highly regarded military general and Roman statesman called Sulla, who is well known for his conflicts with his political opponent in the Roman Republic, namely Marius, who in turn is known for his reforms of the Roman military. The Greek city-states were gravitating towards Mithridates and Pontus, and this would be problematic for the Romans, who sensed that they could lose vital territory in the eastern Mediterranean as a consequence. The tyrant or ruler of Athens at the time was a pro-Mithridatic statesman called Aristion, and this political stance made Athens a target for Sulla. With Sulla's political opponents in control of Rome, support was not forthcoming, so Sulla had to resort to the plunder of Greek islands in order to continue his campaigns. This included plundering the shrine at Delphi. The Thebans decided not to oppose the Romans, so Sulla would have allies on the peninsula. Sulla would starve Athenians into submission over the course of the winter that started at the end of the year 87 BCE. The Athenians had to resort to cannibalism, and when the city fell, the Romans destroyed it, indiscriminately murdering the population and sending a clear message to Mithridates. Athens and other Greek rebels paid the price thanks to the Mithridatic reign of Pontus. Greece paid the price in the theatre of war, despite any Roman respect of Greek culture in general. It was this deep respect of Greek culture and academia that allowed Greece to prosper in the aftermath of this dreadful period. Greece was now completely under the rule of the Romans and was allowed to develop during this relatively peaceful period of the early Roman Empire. The classical city-states of ancient Greece, including the Peloponnese and the cities of Thebes and Athens, were within the Roman province of Achaea. To the north was the Roman province of Macedonia. And at some point during the Pax Romana, the early period of the Roman Empire, a province called Epirus was created on the west coast of the Balkan Peninsula.
Christianity.
We may be aware of the fact that throughout the existence of the Roman Empire, the religion of Christianity, based on the teachings of Jesus Christ, went from being a small splinter cult of Judaism to becoming the official religion of the entire empire. When studied in detail, this is quite an amazing story which shows just how powerful religion can be. However, it is very interesting to speculate just how much the presence and influence of Greek culture in the Eastern Mediterranean affected the ability of Christianity to become so important in the Roman Empire. Since the conquests of the Macedonian king Alexander the Great, Greek influence had remained in Judea, and a version of the Greek language called Koine Greek was commonly used in this area of the world. It would have been a language that Jesus would have been aware of alongside the native languages of Hebrew and Aramaic. As such, early Christian writings would have been translated to Greek quite naturally. For example, the Tanakh, which is the original Hebrew Bible, was translated into Greek to become the Septuagint, which was used by the early Christian church. So the writings of the Jews, which are an integral part of the Christian Bible, would have been accessible to Greek speakers and therefore would have aided their spread across the eastern half of the Roman world. As the Roman political centre moved from west to east, the influence of Christianity on the Roman Empire would naturally become stronger as Greek-speaking lands were now the centre of the Roman world. The spread of Christianity into the Greek-speaking world was very quick, but with mixed fortunes. The Greeks had been familiar with Judaism, so it was generally tolerated, but they were not so familiar with Christianity and were very wary of the apostles who were emerging in their lands trying to spread the word of Jesus. Some Greek speakers were open-minded to Christianity, and churches were allowed to be constructed. Paul the Apostle travelled to Athens, where there was already a Jewish community. The Athenians did not all readily accept the sermons of Paul, but after he left Athens for Corinth, it does seem that a Christian community emerged within the city. Paul was impressed by the Athenian dedication to their religious beliefs, but it was also this dedication to their pantheon of Olympian gods that prevented any quick take-up of the monotheistic Christian values. Many feared the influence of Christianity, not just in Greek lands, but also in the wider Roman world. And many Christians would be persecuted for at least 3 centuries until the reign of Emperor Constantine and the introduction of laws to prevent Christian persecution in Roman lands. The Roman emperor, called Diocletian, would persecute Christians during his reign, and his Caesar emperor of the Balkans was Galerius, who initially supported the persecutions before issuing the Edict of Toleration, which outlawed the persecutions in the Balkans shortly before Constantine outlawed it throughout the empire. Constantine rebuilt the city of Byzantium, originally built by Greeks, and he renamed it Constantinople. Emperor Constantine also called the First Council of Nicaea, which would allow Christian leaders to agree a consensus on the direction of Christianity within the Roman Empire, with a view to prevent infighting. The long-lasting Greek tradition of the Olympic Games suffered as a result of the rise of Christianity. Although we could to some degree blame the Romans for a decline in the quality of the Olympic Games, the Romans still allowed the Olympic Games to take place though. Often cited is the embarrassing moment when the Roman Emperor Nero decided to hijack the Olympic Games by taking part in a number of events and declaring himself the winner, whether he had earned a victory or not. The Olympic Games were being influenced by Roman culture, such as when competitions between people and animals were introduced, emulating such competitions witnessed in Roman amphitheatres involving gladiators. Christian society regarded this kind of violent spectacle as very un-Christian, and as a result the popularity of the games declined until it practically disappeared. Emperor Theodosius I made Christianity the official religion of the Eastern Roman Empire and outlawed pagan festivals such as the Olympic Games, while his grandson, who ruled as Emperor Theodosius II, burned down the Temple of Zeus at Olympia.
The fall of the Western Roman Empire.
There was a very distinct cultural difference between the Roman Empire's west and east. The west was the lands of Roman origin, initially centred on the city of Rome and culturally Latin. The east was influenced by Greeks, and the Greek language was preserved here. However, during the 3rd century, the Roman Empire as a whole was fragmenting on a political level. The Roman armies were wealthy and powerful and able to influence the politics of the empire directly. As such, emperors were often being restricted in their powers and frequently assassinated. The turmoil of the 3rd century would encourage barbarian tribes to attack Roman borderlands. Greek lands were well within the borders, so not directly vulnerable to barbarian invasion. This did not make them impenetrable though. During the 260s, an alliance of Germanic tribes, led by the Heruli and supported by the Goths, set sail from the Black Sea, and upon reaching the Balkan Peninsula, they raided the cities of Argos, Corinth, Olympia and Sparta before heading to Athens. Their brutal destruction of Athens is said to have left a long-lasting effect on the city. During the 4th and 5th centuries, barbarian attacks on the lands of the Roman Empire increased. The Roman Empire split into two halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. And the Western Roman Empire collapsed, while the Eastern Roman Empire survived to become what we more commonly call the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire was a Greek-speaking empire, although the Koine Greek that had prospered during the earliest years of Roman dominance of Greek-speaking lands had now evolved to become what we refer to as medieval Greek. Despite the official language of Roman societies being Latin, the Byzantines decided to officially announce Greek as their empire's official language in the 7th century.
Byzantine Greece.
Greece was not at the centre of the Byzantine world, nor was it enclosed by the Byzantine world in the way that it had been while under Roman control. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, different powers emerged throughout Europe and the Mediterranean, and if they were interested in Greek lands, then it may not have been the greatest priority for the Byzantines to defend them. The Byzantines were under pressure on a number of fronts, whether it be the Muslims expanding from Arabia, the Germanic and Latin societies battling against them on the Iberian and Latin peninsulas, or the semi-nomadic societies raiding from the other side of the Danube River. Certainly before the Arab expansion, the Byzantines were using much of their resource trying to defend its territory from the aggression of the Sasanian Persians. It was during this period that the nomadic culture called the Avars, alongside the Slavs, who were the tribes of Eastern Europe, invaded the Balkan Peninsula from the north, seizing territory from the Byzantines while they were distracted elsewhere. Later on in the 7th century, a new group of aggressors called the Bulgars would also look to seize their own part of the Balkan Peninsula, with the Byzantines now preoccupied by the Arabs. We know that the city of Thessaloniki was besieged in the late 7th century, but there is some confusion about exactly who and when. There is good evidence that a confederation of Slavic tribes besieged the city in the 670s, but the relationship between the Byzantines and the Bulgars deteriorated shortly afterwards, and there are whispers of a Bulgarian siege of Thessaloniki in the following decade. So the Byzantines were struggling to keep their grip on the Greek heartlands of the Balkan Peninsula. When it looked like the Byzantine Empire was spiralling downwards, a resurgence would come which would stabilise the Byzantine Empire, and this should not be too surprising. Geographically, the Byzantine Empire was in a great location. It was very defensible within its capital city of Constantinople, and some of its outlying territories in Anatolia and Europe were quite mountainous, which always hampers the movement of potential aggressors. Not only that, but it had all of the prestige of Greek culture, which was admired by other cultures who wished to benefit from its influence. Many centuries before, the newly monotheistic Roman Empire wished to suppress Greek culture for fear that it could play against the new cultural direction of the Roman Empire. Now, the situation would be different. The Byzantines would want to use the impressiveness of Greek culture to enhance its own profile, regardless of the fact that it was founded on a pagan belief system. This aspect of Greek religion is worth exploring in further detail. When we think of Greek religion, we think of two things generally. Firstly, we think of the pantheon of ancient Greek gods. Secondly, we think of the modern Greek Orthodox Christian Church. Greece as a nation-state did not exist until the 19th century, so there was no country called Greece until modern times. The Greek Orthodox Church emerged as a definite entity after the Great Schism caused a huge rift from the Roman Catholic Church in the 11th century. So the modern Greek Orthodox Church could be mistaken to be the Orthodox Church based on the country of Greece, but it used to be far more than that. It is called the Greek Orthodox Church because it's based on the Greek-speaking world of the Byzantine Empire in the 11th century, and today's modern Greek-speaking world is somewhat restricted to the modern country that we call Greece. So the church far predates the country, dating back to the Byzantine Empire. With the Byzantines using their assets to try to reassert themselves against their respective enemies from all sides, there must have been a number of reasons to prioritise the reconquest of the Balkan Peninsula from the Slavs who had migrated to and settled it. Primarily, its strategical location in terms of controlling the trade patterns of the Mediterranean Sea were undoubtedly advantageous. But the prestige of maintaining control of the heartlands of Greek culture would have been good in terms of demonstrating Byzantine cultural superiority. It does appear that well-educated cultures such as the Muslim Arabs had a very keen interest in Greek philosophy and academia, and many of us will be aware of the success of Arabic academia during the medieval period, and this would not have been possible had it not been for the Muslim Caliphate's close proximity to the Byzantine Empire, who actively encouraged its own scholars to learn from the writings of the classical Greek polymaths. The Byzantine effort to preserve and promote classical Greek ideas and values undoubtedly gave their empire a respectability that empowered it. In order to make the repossession of the Balkan Peninsula successful, the Byzantines would have to concentrate a greater population of Greek speakers to this region, and so in order to counterbalance the Slavic migrants, Greek speakers from city-states of the Italian peninsula and the Anatolian peninsula were relocated. The Balkan Peninsula was back under Byzantine political control, and a re-strengthening of the Byzantine Empire followed.
Prosperity.
The Byzantine rulers that followed the period of uncertainty where iconoclastic rulers had threatened the stability of the church during the 8th and 9th centuries took steps to restructure the empire and give local rulers some ability to govern their own local areas more effectively. The empire was split into themes, which are similar to districts. The establishment of these themes allowed the cities of the Balkan Peninsula to become more prosperous as a consequence. The reconquest of the island of Crete during the 10th century was key to the protection of the Byzantine lands of the Aegean also. Muslims from the lands of the Western Mediterranean had conquered the island of Crete during the previous decade, and this will have hampered Byzantine trade and pressurised the Aegean coasts and islands due to raids and piracy. The reconquest of Crete was vital for the health and economy of the Aegean region of the empire, and in turn the wider Byzantine Empire as a whole. The reconquest of Crete was achieved after the re-establishment of Byzantine rule over the Balkan Peninsula, so now the region could simply get on with the job of controlling its fortune. Local industries within the settlements could concentrate on creating produce and, in turn, profit. Athens, Corinth and Naupactos were involved in silk production, but the most notable city for silk production was Thebes. Thebes specialised in silk trade, which had a positive effect on the empire. It would be societies like the growing trade republic of Venice that would capitalise on the opportunity to purchase the Theban silk. The Byzantines would in turn invest in the silk industry of Thebes by constructing an aqueduct and encouraging monastic establishments to become involved in silk production. Normans from the north coast of France had conquered the south of the Italian peninsula and actually attacked and plundered Corinth and Thebes in the middle of the 12th century. The capital city of the theme Nicopolis was the port city of Naupactos. The flourishing trade opportunities of the Balkan Peninsula made Naupactos a very important port, and one which was improved to cater for the upsurge in trade. A bishopric was established at the city. The Byzantines had made an effort to establish bishoprics throughout the peninsula to further establish firm society values. Situated at the western end of the Gulf of Corinth, it would have been a convenient point from which to travel by sea to the western Mediterranean lands such as the Italian peninsula. It would have been a favoured stop-off point for diplomats travelling by boat from east to west or vice versa. This was some time before the Corinth Canal was constructed in the 19th century to prevent ships from having to circumnavigate the Peloponnese, but it may have been that the Diolkos was in use, which was a trackway which could be used to pull ships over land across the 4-mile Isthmus of Corinth. The Diolkos had first been used during the Classical period. Corinth itself was a very affluent city before the attack of the Normans. Corinth had focused on the production of ceramics and glass as well as the aforementioned silk. The city was modernised in respect of its industries, but the attack of the Normans was quite a setback. Corinth was the capital of the theme of the Peloponnese, which had been attacked by pirates while the island was under Muslim control. But the Peloponnese experienced a period of relative peace and prosperity between the period of the Byzantine reconquest of Crete and the Norman attack on Corinth. Before this period of prosperity in the Balkan Peninsula, and a period where I've seen the Balkan Peninsula described as the most prosperous region of the Byzantine Empire as a whole, Athens was a small and relatively insignificant town. The reason for this is that the whole tradition of ancient Athens was just a little bit too traditionally Greek for the liking of the early Christianised Romans, who sought to restrict Athens' educational establishments and temples in favour of Christianising the city. However, it is fair to say that when the threat of traditional pagan values was no longer a factor, those values came to be respected and rediscovered as more modern generations within the Byzantine Empire saw Athens as an ancient place with a great historical legacy and a place of great learning. Therefore, many saw Athens as a place of pilgrimage, and so interest and activity in the city increased. A number of beautiful churches and monasteries were constructed during this period of prosperity, especially during the 12th century, and many can still be seen in Athens to this very day.
The Latin Empire.
The year 1204 brought Europeans to Constantinople. The Crusades had taken place initially to aid the Byzantine Empire in reclaiming their lost Christian lands from the Muslim countries of the Middle East. The reality is that the Crusades became a European quest for conquest and plunder, and by the 13th century, Constantinople became a target during the Fourth Crusade. The Latin Christians of the Roman Catholic countries of Western Europe sacked the Byzantine capital city of Constantinople. The Byzantine Empire was conquered by the Latins, and the Byzantine aristocracy was sent into exile. The Byzantine Empire, including the Balkan Peninsula, was now a part of the newly formed Latin Empire. Very quickly, the great trading republics of Genoa and Venice grabbed hold of islands and lands. The Genoans took Corfu and Crete, while the Venetians took some islands in the Aegean Sea, as well as some coastal points at the south of the Peloponnese and the Gallipoli Peninsula. The western lands of the Balkan Peninsula north of the Peloponnese became the independent despotate of Epirus. Epirus expanded its influence over central Greece before all of its lands were consumed by the Bulgarians in the year 1230. The Bulgarian influence waned as the Epirates fought back, but later in the century the Byzantines returned to reclaim their lost lands from the Latins. The one piece of land that they did not get back from the Latins was the Duchy of Athens. Athens was never Roman again after the fall of Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade. The dominant Latin power of the Balkan Peninsula was the Principality of Achaia, based on the Peloponnese. A fortified town was built very close to the site of ancient Sparta, and the town was called Mistras. Mistras is a symbol of the beginning of Latin rule of the Peloponnese, or in other words, the beginning of a new period of history. The Byzantines did have an influence over parts of the Balkan Peninsula after the fall of the Latin Empire, and during the remainder of the 13th century and throughout the 14th century, but this is often disputed, and the peninsula was never under the dominance of just the Byzantine Empire again. In the middle of the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire finally fell once and for all to the Ottoman Turks, and Greece would become Ottoman territory. The Venetians would often come into conflict with the Ottomans over Balkan territory, and especially the outlying lands. In the early 19th century, Greek revolutionaries rose up against the Ottoman Empire, and this was the beginning of the establishment of a Hellenistic republic that led to an independent Greek kingdom in 1832 and the recognition of a modern nation state that we know today as Greece.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels gets you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Cocktails up here feel just right. Is Cambria amazing? All right. Bring a date, your team, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com. See you on the roof.
Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the History of the World podcast on the subject of Roman Greece. And thank you very much to Nick Kabilafkas for recommending that we do an episode on this. He earned the right to commission this episode, and I hope I did the subject some kind of justice, Nick. But thank you so much. If you enjoy the podcast, you'd like to support the podcast, then visit our website, click on the Patreon link and sign up to make a monthly contribution. You'll become a lifelong member of the History of the World podcast Illuminati, qualify for gifts and rewards, including the right to commission your own special episodes, such as what Nick Kabilafkas has done for us this week. Our next special episode will actually be for a good friend of the podcast and Illuminati member, Mandy Kirk, and she's asked for a very specific subject. She's asked for the history of her region of California, her little area of California in southern Sonoma County and the town of Petaluma. Now, I believe that this is a fascinating topic and a real look into, it's a reflection of the history of the West Coast of the United States. So we're going to listen to and learn a lot about that area. So I very much recommend it, even though it seems very specific. It's a real doorway into the history of California. This week was a specially commissioned episode. But as ever, if you want to get in touch with the podcast, drop me a line at historyoftheworldpodcast@mail.com. And don't forget that you can follow the podcast on our social media pages: Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Tumblr, Threads, and Mastodon. And just a reminder, tomorrow there's going to be a debrief episode. It normally comes out alongside this one, but I'm going to delay it by one day because tomorrow is the birthday of the History of the World podcast. We are 6 years old. So if you've been here for the entire 6 years, well done. And we'll have a little celebration episode tomorrow. But as for this week, that's it. And thank you so much for listening to this special episode. And until tomorrow when we celebrate, be good.
The History of the World podcast, written and presented by Chris Hasler. Please consider making a financial contribution by going to the historyoftheworldpodcast.com website and clicking on the Patreon link. Email the show at historyoftheworldpodcast@mail.com. And don't forget to join our social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. See you next time.